Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's also Running on Ice, the newsletter that could not be colder. You can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/running on ice. Today, we welcome Patrick Porter, Vice President of Operations at ODW Logistics. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Hey, thanks, Mary. Good to be here.
I'm excited for today because we kind of get into the frozen warehouse side of things, and we've done a lot of the software aspects of it, the hardware, like the behind the scenes part of it, but this is focusing more on kind of that day to day and really making your warehouse the best that it can be, which is kind of important and in my thoughts. Before we get too far into that topic, though, let's get some background on you and how you got started at ODW.
Yeah. Uh, so I started in logistics kind of by accident, stumbled in, as a lot of people do. I was in construction for a little while, and I ended up taking a job just as a temporary, got in, found that I did really well, and it's a great industry to kind of grow into. I was in the public kind of dry warehousing, working my way up, ended up going into frozen warehousing for a little bit, and then found this company, ODW, and really love the values, love the family owned, privately held kind of approach. And I think it lined up with what I hold near and dear. So it worked out. I've been here 9 years.
I like it. I also like that you just fell into it. I think that most of the people that end up in logistics didn't necessarily like, unless, logistics is in your family. Most people just kind of like, well, it was a job when I needed it, and then I
I,
just never left.
yeah. And you're seeing now, I think it's becoming a thing. People are recognizing what a great industry it is, and it's becoming more of a focus in colleges. But certainly a lot of people just kind of stumble in and stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was graduating, they had just introduced a supply chain degree, and I was like, "What's that? Not important." And now here I am. Oh, was the joke on me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. It's a great industry.
So, when it comes to the frozen warehouse side of things, obviously you have some of your smaller ones that maybe, is kind of niche, super niche to just one specific thing. And then you have, your real casual mom and pop operations of a 300,000 square foot warehouse, which is massive. You don't have just $10 million warehouses on every block. But there is that sweet spot of kind of those mid-tier ones of, it's not super small where you're kind of limited to just a couple different commodities, and it's not, a behemoth that is a monstrosity. So what kind of sets those mid-tier ones apart? That's really like, hey, this is actually something I should look at as a shipper.
Yeah. I think there's some that's true in all warehousing. In frozen warehousing, it's even more true. These buildings are incredibly expensive. There's a huge capital investment because of the different ammonia systems or freon systems that go into it. And so you end up with a handful of really big organizations who have gone out and purchased a lot of those mid-tier groups. And so you've got really, really large organizations on the top of frozen. And then as you kind of referenced, you've got these smaller, maybe one shop operations that have been around for a long time, or a family business, or they own the building. And so there's a lot of that. And so the mid-tier kind of option, I think, is just threading the needle and is that sweet spot, because you get the best of both worlds. In the larger ones, you're going to have access to the technology. A lot of times the big companies will have a freight arm or transportation piece that goes with it. You've got the big food safety things that happen. You can get into automation, a more robust WMS system. And then you get the smaller ones that maybe don't have all of that, but you get really white glove service, and you establish great relationships with customers. And there's just kind of this history and these long-term relationships, which are really great for partnerships. And that mid system, so the mid-tier provider like an ODW is perfect. You get the best of both worlds. You get that white glove service. You are a customer that really matters. There's that relationship. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but you also get the access to a higher system, maybe some of the technology that's important. You get the understanding of retail compliance, which is really big. And then, a lot of times you get the transportation package that goes with it.
I kind of like that part because it's like because, there's only so many of, your Nestle's and Unilevers. There's only so many of those huge, huge shippers that need those massive warehouses and those massive operations. Majority of those shippers are small or medium-sized businesses. And, if I'm a family run shipping company that's really, or not shipping company, if I'm a family run manufacturer that maybe specializes in, frozen cheesecakes or something. I don't want to sit there. I want to like I'm still pretty protective over my stuff and my goods. And I want to make sure that, I'm working with someone that understands that, you know, 10% loss every year is really gonna hurt my bottom line. Cause obviously some of those bigger shippers, they can take a hit here and there, but those medium ones, they can't. And, not having that partner that really is like, no, 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 we've got you. Like, we're in this with you instead of just like, "Yeah, we'll take your check. Sounds good." I think that that's something that is incredibly crucial to that supply chain is having someone that's actually on your side and saying like, "We are just as invested in your business as you are."
Yeah. It's, it, you know, it's with logistics, there's everything's changing, it's always moving, and so having that relationship with your provider is extremely important. Everybody gets curveballs, and then when you get those, you want somebody who understands that and is going to prioritize it. Sometimes with a bigger partner, you're a number, right? Or you're a very, very small fish in their pond. And so what's important to you may not be important to them, or may not be as important to them. And so that's important. But then also you're shipping to the same big retailers. You have the same needs for technology like EDI sets that need to be brought into to play, or uh, the retail compliance aspect, which is so expensive. So, maybe a smaller provider doesn't have that ability to give you the EDIs that you need, or maybe they don't have the experience of shipping to the big retailers, all the label compliance that goes with
Right.
it. So it's tough.
It is tough because you have to find that balance because at the same time, if you go with a big one and, your annual spend isn't what they want it to be, then suddenly you're customer 20 on the list. Whereas some of those mid-tier ones, your customer like 1 or 2 because it's just, everybody's spending around the same, or you just have that heavier relationship where you don't get caught up in because also, large shippers, they're so fast and efficient and make so many changes on a dime. Um,
Insert sarcasm here.
yeah. You don't wanna kind of be like, "Okay, well, I have to wait for a 6-month approval process before you can even start looking at mine," like, that's not helpful. So yeah, it's nice that there is still that option of, that resiliency and that, just that partner that's like, "No, we got what you need, like, you focus on making the best cheesecakes that one can make, and we'll focus on getting your product there in one piece and still frozen, or refrigerated if that's what the cheesecake requires." Um so when it comes to, the competition, because obviously your mega warehouses are probably not competing for the same shippers or the same clients as some of those mid-tier ones, but a lot of times there is some crossover. How do those small and niche kind of cold storage warehouses almost kind of outmaneuver or outperform some of those big, huge ones?
Yeah. So you touched on a little bit, right? So you look at the mid tier things. So like an ODW, we take a very entrepreneurial approach to our leadership. So the general manager of the facility, we encourage them to run that like they're the CEO of that building. They're going to make the decisions real quick on based on what the customer needs. I've worked for large organizations before. That's one of the reasons why I ended up going to ODW is because I got so frustrated where we have a customer that needed a bit of technology to help support, this project that they were doing. It was going to make us a good amount of money. It was a very small investment, but because of the size of the organization I worked for, I had to go through all of these approvals. And so it's getting approved locally and then nationally, and then you just keep going this thing. And so the decision making timeline, it was 6 weeks to make a decision on a project that we could have pulled the trigger on real quickly, one that the thing helped the customer, provided the service that they needed, and made a really good margin on top of it. But so much red tape, so much bureaucracy. And I think that nimbleness is something that really sets kind of the mid tier provider apart. You have a need and I can get you a solution super quick. There is no red tape, there is no bureaucracy. We're going to be able to make a decision quickly and get you what you need. So I think that's one of the big differences. Um, some uniqueness too, like the frozen warehouse. A lot of these big organizations are set for large volume, repeatable business. A lot of food distributors or food companies have unique needs, and some of the mid tier options that are available to them are more niche. So you think like a bread company. Um, One of the freezers we have is you've got frozen, you've got ambient space, and you've got cooler space all within the same building. So for like a bread producer, they want to be able to bring that bread in as fresh. It goes into the freezer, it freezes, and then it needs to come out and temper before it ships back out again. Well, there's not that many facilities that have access to all of those different spaces within the same four walls. So it's a little bit unique, and I think you see a little bit more of that in kind of the mid tier players.
I think, yeah, I think you kind of like really hit that on the head because you're not just necessarily constrained. Because with some of those smaller operators, the chances of them having ambient temperature, refrigerated, cold, all in one building is pretty slim. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it's much more uncommon. Just because, if it's just a smaller operation, they don't necessarily have the demand for all of those. And then, in some of the larger ones, they might have a shipper that takes up 90% of the space and frozen. So, if you need kind of all three, it might be harder. You might still have to go to different warehouses to make sure that you can fit all of your stuff. So it's nice that there is kind of that middle ground of like, don't worry, like we have space for everyone, but also more importantly, the thing that you touched on is, that speed at which you can make those decisions and kind of make things happen for people because if it takes you 6 weeks to get something approved or get a change done or anything like that, I mean, shoot, I've waited 6 months for a change to happen before, and that's how quickly that went. And so if you're waiting that long, that's and then for after that 6 weeks where that decision's made, you still have to implement this change. You still have to figure out if it's gonna work. So suddenly, we're looking at 12 to 14 weeks before I start to see any, because if I have 6 weeks to get something approved and then another 6 weeks to get it implemented and changed and work through all the kinks of it, I'm looking at 12 to 14 weeks before I'm starting to really see that change effect or potentially a return on that investment. So that takes a lot of time. And if I'm a medium sized shipper, I don't know that I want to eat this loss for 6 to 12 to 10 to 14 weeks because that's a long time. That's like almost a whole quarter. No, it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Is it? Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
almost a quarter.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I think in addition to that, one thing like a mid player is you got regional support a lot of times. So some of the smaller facilities, if there is a ton of need for weekend work, or hey, I've got a lot of volume coming in, I need to start opening up additional shifts to be able to handle this. Some of the smaller kind of standalone places won't have the resources to be able to bring to bear. Where a regional resources, I can call up this other leader who's in a building who's just down the street. I've got this happening. Can I get some folks to come over and help support us? Right. And so you've got those levers to pull the other way and bring resources to bear. Or, hey, I've got to go change the racking configuration because we've got this happening, and you've got get like an engineering group. You're big enough to bring engineers to bear. Or I've got to get smart about the way that my system does slotting because the velocities are changing on this item versus another item. So it kind of the best of both worlds, like we keep saying.
Also, everyone sleeps on regional providers, and we need to stop sleeping on them, especially for like LTL services or like storage services. Those regional providers are unsung heroes, and I will stand. That's my hill I will die on.
Yeah. Well, I'm right there with you. I think there's something to be said about that. They know the area. There's a lot of momentum, and everybody says synergy. It's such a tacky word, but there's a lot of that too. So I'll say it.
So when it comes to, because I find that a lot of times if you're a small to medium shipper and you partner with a small to medium, like, I was doing so well. So a lot of times when you're a small to medium shipper, I find that you're more often than not also partnering with a small to medium sized transportation provider or logistics service provider. And then those loyalties are like just like so tightly wound. Why do you think that there is such that loyalty? I mean, obviously there's everything that we've talked about already, but what has been kind of like the thing that has made you guys go, oh, this is how we are attracting our customers and holding on to them, versus, them maybe switching to go to the one of the behemoths.
Yeah. Well, it is relationships. So the founder of our company, Bob Ness, he's always said this is the people business. It is absolutely true. It was true when our company was started. It's true today. So the relationships that we have with customers and with vendors and with partners really is a huge differentiator for us. So, a lot of our customers across our network, we've had relationships with them for more than a decade. Those customers, you have people who come in to those organizations. They have a really great experience. They've got a relationship with folks within our organization. They go to somewhere else, then all of a sudden they've got a provider. Where they're at, they need a new provider, right? So those relationships end up bearing fruit. It's all about the way that you treat people. I think it's another differentiator with some of the mid-sized companies. So when we have customers, we assign an executive sponsor to them. So somebody who stores at our frozen facility is going to have a direct line to a member of our executive team, right? Hey, I've got this issue, and they know each other by name. They've got the cell phone connections. Our executives are reaching out to them. There's a contact, and so having that relationship makes a big difference, right? We listen to the voice of our customers. We know what's important to you, and that kind of interpersonal touch makes a huge difference. And that's not just the relationships we have now, but when a customer exits, because they do exit, maybe there's something that changes, but the way that we conduct ourselves, we're ethical all the way through it. We're going to make sure that we exit that customer the right way, leave on good terms, because it is a small industry, and those relationships come back.
Yeah. I have long since said that the supply chain or the logistics network in any city is the smallest little pool that there ever was, and not necessarily limited to any city. Like, I feel like where it's like constantly like the 6 degrees of separation of just like, oh, I know someone that you know, and all it takes is one bad to get just an atrocious reputation. Um, I actually really like that you guys have that, like, executive person that you assign to each one, because you're gonna have those times where mistakes happen. It's just the sheer nature of this business, and sometimes they just need someone to just, like, for lack of a better word, like, they just need to yell at them just to let their feelings out, and then it's like, "Okay, like, this is this like, thank you for telling me. I understand you just had to yell it out. That's fine. We don't love it. We don't love that we made the mistake and we made you feel this way, but here's what we've done to correct it. And as always, like, you have my number." Instead of sitting there and being like, let me just call 1-800 customer service, hope that I get someone that's actually able to fix it or able to escalate it. Because a lot of times, if you call like 1-800 customer service, they're just like, I don't know how to fix that. Like, I can't do anything. And then you have to wait on hold to get it escalated. And then you have to wait on hold more. And so it's so much easier just to say, here as your account manager, they'll have all your problems, and then for really big problems or, like, things that you're, like, super unhappy about, here's this person that you can call, and they're available. If you just need to shout at them, you can. Please don't, but you can.
Yeah, but you can't. So that's like kind of the reactive thing. I mean, I say reactive, but there's proactive conversations that are happening between the top level executives on both sides of that. But proactively, we use a lot of tools like a net promoter score. So, we'll go ask a bunch of questions. What I think is a little bit unique is we'll ask the customer a series of questions, have them rank us. We ask the ODW side on that same account the same questions, and then we'll match those scores up and say, hey, we thought we were doing really, really well at this. You don't think so? Where's the gap? Because clearly there's a gap, and you'd be amazed. We pride ourselves on that not happening too often because we stay really connected to our customers. But we'll go into situations where we have a really different perception of this certain issue. How did that happen? And then those conversations are super, constructive and they help us resolve that. And then we'll go into like customer business reviews where it's more KPI driven or project driven or whatever. But great lines of communication make all the difference.
Those so I've worked at a couple 3PLs in my day. And the fact that like if I was a pricing analyst, so I would run bids for people and I'm like, "Hey, can you get me a picture of this freight or can you get me these details so I can include it in this bid so we can get the customer obviously the best pricing possible?" And they're like, "Well, we don't want to bother them." And I'm like, "You're not bothering them. You're just like this is they are paying us to do a service. We are doing what they paid for." And I've never really understood why people are so hesitant to reach out to their shippers and feel like they're bothering them, and I'm like, "No, we're doing a service for them," and it actually really surprised me. I think it was 2 years ago? La it was either the study came out last year, but it was, like, on 2023 data, and it was basically a whole, I think it was, like, NTT Data and Penske, I think, partnered for this study, and it was basically, here's how logistics service providers have thought that their relationship with their shippers were. It's great. Here's the exact same thing from the shipper side and the gap between the 2. 3 like, logistics service providers were like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, 90% customer satisfaction." Shippers were like, 70. They are not doing what I want them to do. And I was like, "Hey guys, have we thought about talking?
Yeah.
Just pick up the phone."
Yeah. It's a lost art. We don't
It
do it
is.
as much in business as we should. I'll see emails go back and forth and, it's like, we're emailing more than two or three times. Let's just pick up the phone. What's going on? But
Right.
it's all about having those relationships and understanding each other's business and what's important. I mean, that's what makes a difference.
Right, and I get that, you don't wanna be a nuisance to your customer, but there's that fine line between saying like, "Hey, something happened. This is good," or like, "Hey, just checking in. How are you feeling?" Because you don't want those quarterly business reviews to just be nothing but like, "Here's everything you're not doing for us, and we're already angry." So, like, fun fact, you have a quarter to fix it, but chances are we're already looking for someone else. So,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you brought up you don't want to be a nuisance. Every customer is different.
yeah.
And so we try to customize those business reviews to what the customer is. Some of them, look, I don't really care what the numbers were last quarter. I want to talk about what's going on. What are you doing for me going forward? And then other ones who want to spend a ton of time going into the quarter. So it's really about knowing the customer, listening to their voice, what's important to you, and making sure that we're having those discussions.
And that is where I think a lot of people have missed is kind of tailoring everything to their customer to make sure that, everybody's happy within reason, obviously. Like if you have a customer that's like, "I would like only gold-plated forklifts to move my things," like that's unreasonable. That is
Yeah.
legitimately unreasonable.
Right.
Instead of with like, "I would like to track my shipments," not unreasonable.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. It's really important to hear the voice for
Yeah.
sure.
So, that being said, speaking of hearing voices, I would like to hear your voice and your opinion on the hottest topic that we have here on Running on Ice. And it is a question that everybody comes on the show has to answer. So, Patrick, is cereal a soup?
There was soup. So, you know, I, you think this would be an easy answer.
Mhm.
I put thought into it and you say, well, go off temperature and you go off of whatever. So I would say no. Right. And I think the difference is the combining of the ingredients at the time of consumption. It's the timing. It's not whether it's hot or
Time.
cold or it's not whether it's grain based or whatever. I think with the soup, you're taking all these ingredients and you're cooking them together. A cereal, ingredients are getting combined right at the time of consumption. That's the
Okay.
difference.
I like that. It's like because the soup, obviously, if you just chop a bunch of stuff up, throw it in a pot, and then serve it, it's not gonna taste very good. It's gonna be awkward. It's gonna be real awkward, and it's not gonna be good. But if you let everything sit for a while and get happy, then it's gonna be delicious. If you do that with cereal, well, you're eating awkward lumpy, just
Yeah.
awkward lumps.
Yeah,
Just
that's right. It's timing. It's all timing.
okay, it's timing. I like that argument. We haven't had that one yet. I just say it's not a soup because they're in 2 separate aisles in the grocery store. So, you know.
Fundamentally, yeah, that's right.
All right. So if anyone has any hot takes on cerealist soup or if they kind of, want to unlock that next level in their frozen warehousing, where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, so odwlogistics.com, go to our website. We've got a great marketing group that would be able to put you in touch. Super nimble. We're great at what we do. Understand our customers' voices, and we'd love to partner with anybody that needs a frozen solution.
All right, well, you heard it straight from Patrick. Their DMs are open and wet and ready for appropriate content, I should say, for appropriate content. Leave your feet for Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it.
That's right.
Thank you so
That's
much for
right.
joining us today.
Hey, thanks, Mary. It was a pleasure.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice here on FreightWaves TV, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/running on ice. See you on the internet.